And this little adventure actually began with me working outdoors using some mixed media, some of my ink tents and watercolour markers to try and capture the view. You can just see the sheep came over the brow of the hill of those trees. But when the sheep, I thought it was an empty field, but the sheep, as I said, came over the brow of the hill. And then I realised, looking in the other direction, what a lovely scene, because I've got the sheep in the foreground and then the trees, and then off in the distance the rolling hills of Devon along the Exe Valley there. So there's some of the footage that I captured. And the sheep are kind of gradually changing position and moving around, going for these feeder bowls. So what I normally do here is I take a little bit of footage and also take a few still photographs. And then I kind of use those references to start to create a painting. And this was pretty much the scene I was going to depict. So I'm back at home now, and I've got some A2 mixed media paper. And I'm starting this one with watercolour marker pen. And if you've seen previous videos, you know that I quite like this method for using the watercolour marker pen to create the line work very quickly. And of course, because it's watercolour, you can move that paint around a little bit if you want to. Later, it's really easy to cover up with acrylic. So it's a really nice, flexible way to get going. Now, quite often, I use Prussian blue to start my drawings, but today I thought I'd go with magenta, just to change things a little bit. And I've started to put in the basic shapes of the first of the sheep. So although I think there were 4 sheep on camera that I showed you before, maybe even 5 actually, I'm just going to go with 3 of the sheep here. And the plan is to have the sheep that I'm drawing at the moment, that one will just be standing there. And then the 2 sheep to the right, they were actually feeding in those blue plastic feeder bins, and I don't want to include those in the painting. So what I'm going to do is include the 2 sheep, but they'll be partially hidden behind a bush and some grass, that kind of thing. So it'll look, like more of a natural scene, hopefully. So what I'm doing here as I draw the animal is I'm trying to ignore detail, and I'm trying to put down just very simple shapes. Now, you could start this process by just simply doing a series of rectangles and then refining that further. But, I prefer in general to try and get the general shape of the animal. But I'm not being overly concerned, with getting it exactly right. But at the same time, I am trying to be as accurate as possible. So it's that sort of delicate balance of kind of letting your hand and your brain kind of work automatically and almost subconsciously, and kind of trying to replicate something of the feeling you got when you were up on top of the hill, but also trying to consciously make sure we get things reasonably well proportioned. So that sheep's not looking too bad in terms of proportion. So I'm just having a bit of a think now about where to put the second one exactly. Now, I do actually do a little thumbnail drawing sometimes. I'll pop that one up on screen for you now. And those little pencil drawings, little biro drawings, just help me to work out the rough composition of the piece. I don't always do that, but it is handy if you've got several animals and a landscape, just to try and save yourself a little bit of time. A quick thumbnail will, just let you know quite quickly whether the composition is going to work. And it's obviously best to sort that out as early on in the painting process as possible. Now, one of the things I really enjoy about painting sheep and cows is how they interact in groups. So you'll often see them peeking around the corner or peeking around from behind another one, and that's part of what appealed to me with this particular arrangement of these 3 sheep. So although the 2 on the right were feeding in those feeder pots, I'm going to use their posture and their body positions as if they're sort of casually feeding and just kind of like peeking around from the bushes that I'll put in. So I'm just sort of popping in the right-hand sheep there. You can see I've indicated the middle sheep already. And just with those few simple lines on the middle sheep, there's no facial features at all, but you can kind of see, you can start to read the body language, that the head's kind of dipped down, and perhaps they're kind of peeking around from the braver member of the flock on the left. And here, this is what I was saying earlier, I'm just popping in an indication, just making this up really, a loose outline with random shapes of some kind of hedge and brush, so that these two animals can kind of be partially hidden, and then the main sheep on the left is standing a little more clear of that undergrowth. So there's our little group of animals, and now we have to put them in their world. So we're up on top of the hills above Exeter in Devon, and a really nice view off into the distance. So I want to suggest a feeling of depth here, that there's a world beyond the field that these sheep are living in. And so to do that, I'm kind of introducing some trees and bushes here, and these will act as a framework to the distant landscape. So having done that, I'm now starting to pop in with loose sweeping lines, just the positions of the hills off in the distance. So there we go, there's our little composition, and hopefully you can see already that just with that simple bit of line work, there's a little bit of a sense of depth. The sheep are very clearly in the foreground, and then the hills are through this frame created by the trees off into the distance. Now, while I was chatting away there, I used some Inktense pencils to put down some blue for the sky. And if you remember from a few weeks ago, I tried this for the first time, Inktense pencils, at one of the art classes I did. One of the guys who came along, he had some Inktense pencils, and we were just trying them out to see how they worked. So I ended up buying myself a set of those, and been really impressed with them, actually. They're great bits of kit. So as you can see, I was able to put in the line work, and then with a quick spray of water and this nice, lovely big brush I've got, I could just move that colour around. And so it's a really, really quick way of covering big areas with colour. And then once the Inktense pencils are dry, then they're waterproof. So it's really good. Really, a little bit like working with acrylics, and that's really cool. And then, in keeping with the line work that I put down earlier, I put down a little bit of magenta from the pencils, and then with the spray of the water, you can see that started to move around the watercolour paint I put down previously, and those two have blended together quite well. So that was also a little experiment I was doing to sort of see, well, how are these two things going to work together, because I hadn't tried that before. So that seemed to work fine. So what I'm doing now is putting in a range of colours, some greens, some yellows, some oranges on these distant fields, still with the Inktense pencils. And then just using the same damp brush, I haven't bothered to clean the brush, and the water spray, I'm just softening all of those areas. So just to put in some quick washes of colour, get the white paper covered,